Hello guys, welcome back. We're going to go on to the next common business decision, which is the decision whether or not to make or buy a product. So make or buy, as I mentioned in the first video, it's another way of saying outsourcing, right? Should the company continue to make this product in-house or should they outsource that to another company? So make means to produce internally. So that means the company manufactures it. Buy, purchase from outside vendor. And this is a common decision that a lot of managers are faced with. About 70% of US companies either currently outsource a portion of their manufacturing process or plan to outsource a portion of their manufacturing process in the near future. So it is a very common decision that they are faced with. And it might not be to outsource entire production. It could just be a component, right? If you're making a unit and it takes 50 different subunits that go into that final unit, maybe you're talking about just outsourcing one or a few of those subunits. Okay, and this also applies to service companies, right? So this relates to manufacturing, obviously merchandising because they're already buying it anyways, and service companies, right? It relates to all of those. Manufacturing, even though you're making the product, like I said, you could outsource a portion of that to an outside company. Merchandising, you're basically outsourcing everything because you're not making anything, right? You're purchasing it from an outside vendor. And even service companies, even though they are making an intangible item, right? If they're just offering their expertise or service, internally, they still outsource a lot. For example, if there's a service company, they might choose to outsource their payroll, right? A lot of companies use ADP for payroll. A lot of small businesses do that because it's more cost effective than hiring an entire accounting department, keeping them up to date on their training, getting them all their materials, supplies, and all of that. It's much more cost effective for them to outsource it to a company that specializes in that. And that's why those companies exist. Okay, so advantages, we just mentioned some. It can reduce overall costs, allow for expertise. And that goes both ways, right? It also allows the company who is outsourcing to focus on what it's really good at, right? So if you have a small business that focuses on making cabinets, that's what he's really good at. He's an expert cabinet maker. It allows him to focus on his craft. He doesn't have to learn payroll law and payroll taxes, right? He can outsource that to an expert and he can focus on what he's an expert for. So it allows for expertise. I was recently reading Jim Collins' Good to Great book, and he talks about the importance for a company to focus on their core business, what they're really good at, and not be distracted by all those peripheral obligations, because that's when a company can start to spread itself thin and suffer because of that. So it is an important concept in business management. Disadvantages. These tend to be a little bit more qualitative. It can lead to poor brand image, right? There was a while, back in like the 90s, 2000s, where companies were outsourcing like crazy. And so there was a lot of loss of US jobs and a lot of shipping of those jobs overseas. And so that hurt the company's brand image, right? Because they were seen as laying off US workers, but still trying to sell their product to US customers. So if you're outsourcing, it can be a touchy subject, especially if it's at the cost of, like I said, US jobs. So it can hurt your brand image. Also, some disadvantages are control, right? Control for quality and logistics, right? And the book does go through others. I'm just hitting on the main points. So here, if you're not manufacturing the part in-house, you lose the visibility for the quality, right? Is the supplier that you're using still using quality inputs, quality materials? Or is there something, sketchy about it? And an example of this was Dell Computers decided to outsource the manufacturing of their batteries they decided not to make the batteries for their laptops. They outsourced it to Sony. This was in mid-2000s, like 2005, 6, because it allowed them, again, to focus on their core business. But then what happened is there were compatibility issues when they received the Sony batteries and put them into the computer. It looked fine, but after a while, there could be a result was that the computers exploded, and there was actually some videos about this and news coverage widespread at the time. I remember because I had a Dell laptop. Yeah, so they were recalled and all of that. So that's an example of when you're not handling the manufacturing in-house, you're not making sure that the specifications are what you need for your overall product. Also, it could lead to bottlenecks, right? If you're dependent on an outside company and they're running behind schedule, now you're running behind schedule. Whereas if you were controlling it in-house, maybe you could coordinate that a little bit better. And that can have huge ramifications, right? If you're not able to get your product to market, sales could drop, brand image could drop, and there could be a lot of negative consequences. All right, so that's kind of an overview of make or buy, and we'll talk about crunching the numbers in the next video.